My life has completely changed ever since I flew my paramotor into the ground from about 100 feet. My sense of time has slipped my mind. There was the crash, of course, and from that, I specifically remember the final thoughts right before I hit, where I'm like, don't die. I do remember like moments right after where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm still here. And then there was that guy that came out of nowhere.
Don't move.
I really struggle to remember this extremely significant, period of time in my life. For the most part, I had this go with the flow mentality. For example, the surgeon would come in and say, oh, I need to fuse your neck and your spine. And at the end, he'd say, do you have any questions? And I'd say something nonchalant like, I'll still be able to fly my paramotor, right? In my mind, I think maybe a little bit of that humor by asking that question kept my spirits high, because what other options did I have? Did you ever see the movie Click? There's that character, Michael Newman, who's played by Adam Sandler. Using the remote control, he could skip forward in time, and for everybody else, time would resume as normal. But for him, like, his body would just be on autopilot. That's kind of what it was like for me. My wife would say, this person came to see you. It seemed like your conversations were going really well. And I'd be like, what the hell? That person came to see me? The first 2 weeks at the Level 1 Trauma Center flew by, and then I found myself at another hospital for rehabilitation. That also was flying by, but towards the end, time started to resume at a normal-ish pace. At that point, everything started to sink in, and I remember when my wife was pushing me towards the exit, as all of the nurses literally were like cheering me on and doing their thing, I felt that shakiness that comes before an unstoppable emotional breakdown. And I was filming the damn thing too. Generally, I think it's really strange when those Instagram chicks make videos of themselves while they're crying, and there I was, fighting back the tears while I was filming myself leave the hospital. I had no idea why the hell I was feeling this way, but by the time that I'd reached the car, I realized that it was the thought that I was going home. I almost died. The micro moments during the fall. So many things had to be just right, just the way they were, in order for me to have survived this. There was the riser twist that flipped me so that I was looking up at the sky instead of facing the ground. The location also happened to be somewhere where the ambulance could get to, rather than being way out in the middle of nowhere in the desert. The fact that I unknowingly held my phone in the hand the entire way just so that I could reach out to 911, it takes them quite a while to answer that damn phone. And before hitting the ground, I went to full power, and that had to have slowed my rate of descent. What if I hit the ground just a little bit faster, When you drop a quarter and it rolls across the room and goes into the tiniest crack, and even if you had like 1,000 more quarters and tried to roll it into that crack again, you could never do it. I was still alive, and it was hitting me, all in that moment. By the time that my wife was helping me into the passenger seat of the car, I was imagining how she and the kids could have already attended my funeral. The thought of them and the thought of all the horrible memories that they would have had of burying their father and then going back to an empty home where they'd made so many memories was catching up to me. I've always told my wife that I want her to be holding my hand when I take my last breath, and I almost that up. The only other time that I felt this uncontrollable sorrow was when I came back home from Afghanistan. I was in this chapel that was perched up on this hill in Missouri, and my whole army company was there. The first sergeant took roll call of all of the soldiers that were in the formation. When a soldier's name was called, they'd sound off with, "Here, First Sergeant!" But eventually, the First Sergeant would arrive at the names of those individuals who were no longer with us, and the chapel was as silent as the crypt. But then the silence broke with the uncontrollable crying from the mothers and the siblings of my brothers who died. And then the bugler filled the room with the sound of taps. Soldiers fired off their rifles for the 21-gun salute. The whole thing emotionally killed me. They were gone, and by luck, I was still there, albeit I got medevaced, but that's a story for another time. But I was home. Enough of the heavy stuff. I am home. Today, I'm grateful that once again, I'm home. My children were eagerly awaiting my arrival in the driveway when we did get home. It was great getting to see them in the hospital, but it's not the same as getting to see them in the comfort of your own home. Aside from my kids and my incredible mom being at the house, my good flying friend Tom was here as well. Tom's the lead meteorologist for El Paso, which is exactly why I had him on my podcast, which is the Paramotor podcast, if you ever want to learn a ton about flying paramotors. But since insurance is so slow to get individuals who are hurt or sick, the things that they need, Tom was able to build a custom ramp so that I'd be able to get into and out of the house. He recruited Sonny to help him get the measurements for the wheelchair ramp. The ramps turned out great, and the kids really enjoy using the ramp to blast off into the backyard. And even I, in spite of being hurt, really enjoy getting to roll down the ramps on my wheelchair. And then there's my friend Frank, who, while I was still in the hospital, came over to the house and fixed the bathtub for the kids. And then there was Lee and Selena, who drove all the way from Deming, which is about an hour and a half away from me, just so I could get a haircut in the comfort of my home. Good friends are hard to come by, and if it weren't for Tom and Frank and Lee and Selena, I wouldn't be able to get into and out of the house, or the kids wouldn't be able to wash their stinky butts. And I'd look like a mess if I didn't have this awesome kind of modern mullet. I almost never have to leave the house. It blew my mind when the discharge nurse at Las Palmas asked me, would you like to go to an outpatient rehab, or would you rather have somebody come to you? It's called home health. I was like, is that a serious question? Bring him on over. And I've made a ton of progress ever since I started with them just a couple of weeks ago. Arthur's my physical therapist, and I quiver when I hear his knock at the door. Kidding, but for real, he definitely challenges me in a good way. Like, he don't give a shit, and that's just the kind of person that I prefer, being that, I have the military background and I like to suck.
Yeah, he's pretty good for a guy that fell out of the sky.
He finishes me off with one-legged squats, and boy, oh boy, those are exhausting. My pelvis was badly fractured in 3 different places. Occupational therapy is intimidating because my right arm and especially my upper back do experience a lot of pain. Even if I'm not doing anything, by the time that the day comes to an end, I'm feeling pretty burnt out. When I first got home, I guarded the hell out of my right arm because it hurt so much, but my OT, Ashley,
Mr. Vela is extremely weak.
Has done such a great job at helping me work through the degrees that the surgeon set right there. She'll exercise my shoulder by doing these raises, and I'm not really concerned about the flexion. My right arm really struggles to get straight.
Bracy, can you please come out of the closet?
No. That's about it. When I attempt to do something with it, like brush my teeth, for example, I feel a lot of sliding and instability in it. I can actually feel my arm shifting that way. I have this fear that I'm always going to have to baby my arm. I want to keep it real. It's not a perfect experience for me. I may not be able to ever fly a paramotor again. If things don't improve, I may be better off without my right arm. I could get a prosthetic. Then I could mindlessly play with my kids rather than having this mangled arm that's filled with metal and causes me a lot of pain. Since we last spoke, I've gone to all of my surgeons' offices for follow-up appointments. My ortho surgeon, Dr. Yang, who's a really cool guy, just reminded me not to put any amount of weight on my right leg and stay in the wheelchair. And they removed all 20 some odd staples that were in my lower abdomen and on my hip. But before leaving his office, I did have to ask him one special kind of question, and I was very disappointed because he said that I wouldn't be able to share big snuggles for 3 months. We do snuggle. I hope he doesn't see this. At my neurosurgery appointment, the nurse practitioner was really impressed with how well I was healing. The incision looked very clean. She had all 25 of the staples removed from my thoracic spine.
My favorite freckle was unaffected.
The cervical surgery was done through the front of my neck. Instead of using staples, all they did was use some glue. My final follow-up appointment was at the office of my orthopedic surgeon who performed that mind-blowing operation on my right arm. The PA, or physician's assistant that I met with, allowed me to increase the degrees of motion. And then she told me that at my next follow-up appointment with them, they would be scheduling my next surgery? What the hell? I thought I was done. I left the appointment once again stewing on the idea that they would go on messing with my arm surgery after surgery, only to find out that it'll never be remotely close to what it once was. The thought of my right arm being amputated is one that pops into my mind very frequently. It's not my hand that is problematic, it's the clunky thing that my hand is connected to that's giving me all these problems. But before closing out this video, let me fill you in on some of the positive updates.
I can't believe you came all this way out here.
A really good friend of mine drove all the way from Arizona to come hang out with me for the day, and it meant a lot to me. He also brought his camera because he has this little YouTube channel. His name's Tucker Gott, but that's irrelevant. All jokes aside, Tucker was amazing. To have the world's most famous paramotor pilot come over to the house was like if I was a basketball player and Michael Jordan showed up to the house. It would be awesome if you went and checked out his video that he filmed right where I'm sitting right now. And lastly, I would have never imagined how many incredible people, presumably like you, who would say such wonderfully kind and inspiring and motivating things to me in the comment sections. I've read every single one of them. Thank you for everything that you have done for me. A GoFundMe was created while I was in the hospital by a friend of mine. Leandra and I would never have started a GoFundMe, but it's unbelievable how many individuals within the community have contributed. For those who have, I seriously feel short of breath at the thought of your generosity. So thank you. Thank you for watching this video, especially to everybody who's subscribed to see me make my recovery. I can't wait to read your comments, and I look forward to seeing you in the next recovery update video. Thank you all very much.